I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight and to our guest speaker, Ross Phillips. Ross tonight is going to take us out of the Flintstone age into the Jetsons. Tonight he's going to talk about, can we finally move out of the stone model age? I should point out that Ross came to us through Dr. Bob Game, who is in Adelaide at the moment, and because Bob has this idea that we'll have a series of continuing education lectures, which we've already had a couple on digital dentistry, so this would probably be the final one for the year. Not the final CPD, but on this topic. Ross is Scottish, but he has lived in England, and he said that because of that small change, we'll be able to understand him tonight, so we'll see. Ross has worked in dentistry for over 9 years, starting in the field of computerised practice management systems. He's accepted a role with Noble Biocare, where he was instrumental in their CAD and CAM system. He's worked with Biomet, 3i, Materialisers, Simplant, and now he's with this company that's marketing the iTero. Ross will give a review of the current trends and techniques in digitising your current workflow, with a glimpse into the realm of digital impression techniques. That's about it, Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for having me in humid Cairns. It plays havoc with my hair. But it's really nice to be here, even though it's a very, very short trip. What I'm going to talk about today is mainly to really give you a lot of food for thought about digital dentistry, because everyone's talking about it. Intraoral scanning and in-surgery milling systems seem to just becoming more and more popular. And what I really want to leave with you today is a set of questions to ask, either yourself or the sales rep or the company, before you make what is a significant purchase. This technology isn't going away, and what I want to do today as well is try and demonstrate where we're at as of today. I'm not going to be telling you what it can do in the future. I'm really going to be telling you what it can do right now. So without further ado, I'll try and keep everything on time. Just to give you a little bit of background about who I work for, it's a funny company name, Core 3D Centres. Basically, Core 3D Centres was set up by 6 businesses who are in the dentistry domain. Most of them were larger commercial laboratories. Some of them were, one of them was they sold gold to laboratories, and another is actually an implant company. And they're called Open Health, and they created the company Core 3D Centres to help facilitate the move into digital dentistry to both dental laboratories and to the dental practice. We're probably one of the largest global groups. We've kind of grown by accident and organically, and because we're independent, we're not affiliated with, say, Noble Biocare, Procera, Straumann and their CARES CAD CAM system, which used to be called Econ. A lot of companies are using us for research and development and looking to partner with us and to access our facilities around the globe to give them a very fast global footprint. So although I'm only going to be talking about a couple of technologies, if there are any questions about other things you've heard about, chances are I'm aware of them, and if I can answer the question, I will. Okay? Just one thing to think about throughout the whole of this talk is I'm going to be talking about something called open architecture. Probably the easiest thing to talk about is an iPhone. The system that iPhone use or Apple use is a very, very good ecosystem. That's what they call it, and it operates really, really well within its own ecosystem. An iPhone can talk to an Apple Mac computer, can talk to the Apple TV, can talk to everything else that Apple do. But if you want to watch a flash video on your iPhone, for example, you can't do that. It only operates well within its ecosystem. And that obviously makes a lot of people frustrated, especially some of the IT geeks who are used to cross-platform compatibility. It's the same in the dental world. You want to be able to have a system that is effectively open. You can access the file and use it in different systems and different software packages. So you'll hear me talk about open architecture, and I think that that equals connectivity, and it kind of helps you future-proof your purchase. So just something to think about is if you can't open it, maybe you don't own it. So for those of you that do have an E4D system or a CEREC system, you know, if you think about, can you use that file and send it to a laboratory elsewhere in Australia or across the globe, or if you want to send the file to a lab to make a PFM, it's something that you may struggle with. Both of those companies are getting better and realize they need to offer more options, and I'm moving into that realm very, very quickly, but it's just something to think about. The other thing I'm going to be talking about a little bit is two types of files. One's called DICOM, which you're probably familiar with. It's digital imaging and communications in medicine. It's a standard format for the storage, printing, and transmission of patient files across the internet and electronically. Most of the DICOM files you see from a CT scan or a cone beam, when you see it in a three-dimensional form, which a lot of the systems do now, basically what that is doing is it's using proprietary algorithms to convert the DICOM file into something called an STL file. The STL file is the files that I like to talk about because that's what you can use for both CAD and CAM, so computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacture. STL was brought about by a company called 3D Systems, and they used it predominantly in stereolithography, which is the printing of objects three-dimensionally. But the STL file has become almost the standard in my business, which is digital impressions and digital design of crowns and bridges. So I'm going to be talking a lot about STL, but DICOM is very much a standard in medicine. STL is more about the three-dimensional object represented on the screen. So where are we at right now? Believe it or not, you already know this, is the impression is the most important part of your treatment plan. Without a good impression, it's difficult to get a good final result for the patient. So an impression taken is inherently difficult, and it's difficult to get it consistent every time. The main challenges faced by everyone in this room and beyond is that's multiple problems: pulls and tears, distortion, temperature, technique, chemistry. You're having a bad day. All of those things are problematic. And of course, the mess of an impression. This image you see on your right is it was actually a dental show, and they were challenging dentists to take an impression as fast as you could take an intraoral scan. And as you can see, they weren't too worried about technique. I think it was about speed. But what you can do is start to think about moving from conventional impressions to the scan, which you see in the bottom right hand of the screen. Some of the problems that you see when you look into that tray, and interestingly, a lot of these problems they can be overcome in the laboratory, but lab technicians spend an inordinate amount of time fixing these things and often giving you a compromised result without you realizing it. And labs have been doing this very skillfully for a very, very long time. So most of these problems are overcomeable and are every day. But what digital will do for you is bring consistency, and consistency is a word I'm going to be using throughout this short talk. So the buzzword of 2012 is digital impressions. There's a number of systems out there, both current, E4D and CEREC through Sirona. There's also a number that are coming. For the orthodontists, if there is any orthodontists among us, Orem are bringing one out. There's a company called 3Shape that are bringing out a system, and of course the unit that you see here that we'll be demonstrating later on is called the CAD and CAM. So there's a lot happening in the digital impression space, and for a company like 3M, who make a huge amount of money from impression material, to invest over $90 million in trying to get their own digital impression system up and running, you know that this is the way we're moving in dentistry. So why would you consider going to an intraoral scanner? Well, basically what it does is it removes all the variables. There's no impression material. There's no environmental factors. Most of the systems can be picked up and used very quickly with very minimal training. There's no trace selection. There's no time sensitivity of materials. And of course, when the impression is then poured, you're not relying on a technician to get that pour done correctly. And then obviously you need a duplicate model and sectioning and pinning of stone models. It's a very labor-intensive process just to get a model that you can start to work on. Currently in the marketplace, there's two types of scanning technology. I'm going to relate some of it to CEREC and EFD and show you what the other systems are starting to develop, just because they're the most well-known systems, but there are a couple of others in the market that aren't necessarily in Australia. The two main technologies is parallel confocal and something called triangulation or sampling. The scanner that you see on the screen here is a triangulation scanner. What that basically does is it takes a single image, 15,000 microns, so 15 millimeters of height, if you like, and it takes a lot of them. It's like a live video feed. And what it does is it uses really, really powerful algorithms to build a three-dimensional model of the area you're scanning. These scanners rely quite heavily on the reflective or the bounce of the light back up into the receiver, and because of that, they often don't like very shiny surfaces. And inside the mouth, there's a lot of shiny surfaces. So often you need to apply a thin layer of some kind of powder to enable it to pick up accurately and without any problems. So they're very, very good, but they often rely on having to spend a lot of time in making sure the field is dry. There's powder, and often it needs a lot of retraction, and often there's generally two operators needed, one to retract and one to scan. But the upside of that is they're fairly inexpensive. The head is relatively small, and the in-surgery milling is very nice if the patient doesn't have a lot of time or for temporization. This is a picture of what the powder looks like. The powder technology has improved considerably, and I know that EFD often doesn't need powder now. Their technology is improving all the time too, but that's just an example. The technology that's been developed in the ITERO system, and also in a couple of the systems that we're involved in the research and development, is a technology called parallel confocal. It's used extensively in microscope technology. I'm not going to try and explain it because I barely understand it, but effectively what the scanner does is send out a beam of light. It's 100,000 points of laser light, and as it's sending out that light, there's some micromotors in the unit that move the light source away from the lens, so it's able to effectively capture in a video feed 300 focal depths. So there's effectively 300,000 reference points, but it only allows parallel light back in focus parallel light back in. So what it picks up is an extremely accurate and clean image where it's able to build the three-dimensional image, if you like, or a set of images. So when you see the demonstration later, you'll notice that every time I want to take a shot, I'm effectively holding the camera steady. But it's actually, as much as it looks like a static snapshot, like an SLR camera, it's actually doing a very complex thing. It's recording a video feed in and around that particular area. Just incidentally, the ITERO scanner, the reason that Core 3D Centres is involved in it and it's been so successful is it's actually been around for 5 years. CAD as a company started archiving stone models for orthodontists over 12 years ago. It was a system called OrthoCAD, which is in Australia but not so popular. They obviously saw a need for recording the data in the mouth rather than having to take an impression and then pour the model up. So that's where it came about from. And the system is in its third incarnation, and over 2 million crowns have been issued using this digital impression taking system. So it is very, very much proven, and certainly it's the only system that has the ability to produce a model that any lab can use. So you don't need any proprietary software systems or to attach a mill to it. you can use this tomorrow and send it to a one-man lab down the street who will be able to work on the model, and that's the difference. We feel certainly right now that virtual articulation is not quite there yet, and most laboratories, I'd say over 90%, would still prefer to have a model, certainly for the final QC, if not for the actual creation of the crown or bridge to begin with. And what I'll do is, I won't spend any more time on the technology itself. I think the proof is in the demonstration at the end of this lecture, but if there are any questions, I'll try and answer them as I go along through the demonstration. So, how do you do a digital impression? Now, I'm just going to talk about the iTero, but I have seen the 3-shape system, which is going to be distributed here by Heraeus. It's going to be called Cara, and I've also seen 2 other technologies that are out there, and they're all basically the same. Give or take how they look, but they're all basically the same premise. The first thing you do is fill in an RX, okay? Now, you can see on the screen, a chart, and all you have to do is chart the area you're going to scan, because it will then tell you exactly the angle and position of the camera for that particular point. Now, interestingly, it'll always default to take the shortest span that it can. Because you're taking the bite-centric, you don't need necessarily the canine guidance you would ordinarily with a traditional impression. The other thing is of course, that one of the main roadblocks to getting your lab work back fast is things like shade selection, and often misinterpreted or misfilled out lab forms. This will not allow you to send off a case unless the patient name is in, the shade is in, and the material selection is in. And that information follows the digital impression all the way through all of its journey, if you like. So there can be no misinterpretation, which is a really nice feature. So the first thing that happens is that the dentist or the orthodontist takes the scan. Now, the parallel confocal scanners tend to be a little larger than something you've perhaps seen with Sirona or EFA-D. And I suppose the easiest analogy to make is it's like an SLR camera. SLR cameras haven't got very much smaller because they need a lot of light to get a good picture. And the sensors also need to be quite large. It's the same with parallel confocal technology. The aperture needs to be very big, and because the light source or the lenses move, the handle, if you like, we call it a wand, needs to be quite big to contain those. Also, people ask me all the time is, can I not just buy the wand and plug it into my computer? Well, you could, but the graphics card itself is a proprietary piece of technology that actually captures 300 frames of information in a quarter of a second. And just to put that into perspective for you, is your DVD player at home is 30 frames per second. The image quality is pretty good, right? I mean, I watched DVD last night, it was fantastic. But that's only 30 frames per second. This is capturing 300 frames of information in a quarter of a second. So you can imagine the image quality. Each picture is 150 megabytes big. It actually uses very complex algorithms to not only compress it, but get rid of data it doesn't need. So by the time it's ready to be sent, it's about 4 megabytes, which is a very nice size for most internet connections. So you scan the area where the prep is in, and the screen will show you not only where to scan, but also where you've just scanned. It's very, very simple to use, and it's quite funny to show people when I'm at an exhibition to stick it in my own mouth and start taking pictures. It kind of freaks people out a bit, but it does work. The most important thing about this is this picture here. This is the final picture you see before you send the information. Now, if you look at it, you're looking at it from the buckle, which you can see very clearly, but you'll see when I do the demonstration, you can spin that around and see the patient's bite in-centric from the lingual. And that's something, as a dentist, you've never been able to do without a model or a cadaver head, because you'd have to chop it in half. So it's really, really powerful, and you can just make out there in the middle of the screen the different colors. And in the top left of the actual image, you can't really see it, but it says clearance legend. So what it actually does is highlight in red or dark orange the areas where it might be a little high on the prep. So while the patient's still in the chair, you know if you've got enough room for the crown that you've prescribed. So if there's not, you can take your high speed, the patient's still numb, the patient's still in the chair, you can take the high speed, adjust that crown prep, erase that small area, rescan it, you don't have to scan the whole patient again, and then double check it. If it's good, you can send the patient back and you know you've got the perfect impression. And that's where the consistency comes in, is being able to see the patient's bite, see the crown, and measure the